The losing streak finally comes to an end out of the Christmas break.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcasting network. We bring you your team every day. I'm Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll kick things off with a recap of the Blackhawks' impressive 4-3 shootout win over the Dallas Stars last night. Then in segment 2, I'll discuss Vaclav Nestrasil with another multi-point performance at the World Juniors. And then for segment 3, I'll also quickly preview the back end of the weekend back-to-back out of the Christmas break as the Blackhawks return to action here this evening against the Pittsburgh Penguins. But first, do have to let you all know, once again, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go and check out FanDuel.com right now to place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, how about that win last night, Blackhawks fans? The losing streak finally comes to an end at 6 games as the Blackhawks, against all odds, take down the Dallas Stars, the second best team in the NHL, 4-3 in a shootout in their first game out of the Christmas break last night, despite having to overcome many obstacles such as traveling from Chicago to Dallas the morning of the game because league rules permit teams aren't allowed to travel until the Christmas break comes to a close. So the Hawks were off the ice for 4 days in a row, and they were obviously without Connor Bedard and Frankie Nazar once again. Captain Nick Foligno still wasn't quite ready to return from his hand injury. And then the Hawks were also down another key forward in last night's game as Ilya Mikheyev was away from the team after his wife recently gave birth to their first child, a daughter. So quick congratulations are in order to the Mikheyev family. But that left the Blackhawks in an even bigger pickle than they already were up front. But it ended up not even mattering as they played their best game since Connor Bedard got injured back on December 12th to also win for the first time since Connor Bedard got injured back on December 12th. Yes, there was a little bit of help that aided the Blackhawks to snapping their losing streak as the Stars did hit the post 5 times in this game. But I thought altogether, taking everything into consideration, being on the road, being off of the ice for 4 days in a row, having to travel the morning of the game, being down 4 key forwards in Bedard, Nazar, Foligno, and Ilya Mikheyev, and then playing against the second best team in the NHL, it was really impressive what the Blackhawks were able to do despite being so shorthanded last night. Altogether, the Hawks led 33-31 in shots on goal. Dallas did have a slight 25-22 edge in scoring chances. However, they took the lead in that category based off a really strong third period, which I thought is when they came with their best push of the night. Arvid Soderblom, who I'll get to here in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, was really strong in that third period as well in overtime to help extend the game and give the Blackhawks a chance to come away with the extra point in a shootout. But it was undoubtedly the Blackhawks' best performance since Connor Bedard got hurt. A really impressive team effort to come away with a win last night out in Dallas. And the 3 stars of the game, the 3 real game changers that I want to talk about here on today's episode. Got a bonus one as a 4th as well. Starting things off is Tyler Bertuzzi. He was my number 1 star of the game last night for the Blackhawks on the top line. Once again with Jason Dickinson, but because Ilya Mikheyev wasn't able to suit up, he was playing the top line right wing spot the last time the Blackhawks played prior to the Christmas break against the Flyers. Well, that meant that Landon Slaggert, who was recalled from Rockford, I actually thought the Blackhawks recalled him as a depth option, and that led me to believe that Nick Foligno wasn't going to be able to play last night in Dallas. Well, turns out the Blackhawks literally had to recall Ilya Mikheyev. I guess they could have gone with 11 forward, 7 defenseman lineup structure, but in order to have a standard 12 forward lineup, the Blackhawks had to call up Landon Slaggert and play him on the top line. Slags, I thought, was really solid in his first game back. But how about Tyler Bertuzzi scoring twice to put an end to his 6-game point drought, his 17th and 18th goals of the season, back doing what he does in the dirty areas, right out in front of the net. Beautiful opening pass from Alex Vlasic to set him up for his opening goal, I should say. And then finding a way to put a loose puck into a yawning cage. Second time that he had a yawning cage off of a play from Vlasic for his 18th goal of the year. The Blackhawks need Bertuzzi to be more involved offensively to have any success whatsoever without Connor Bedard and Frankie Nazar. And while I understand that his primary running mate, particularly on the power play in Bedard, has been out for a couple of weeks now, but for Bertuzzi to go pointless in 6 consecutive games, once Bedard 5 consecutive games, 6, including the game that Bedard got injured against the Blues. For him to go 6 consecutive games without a point, there was also a 5-game stretch there where Bertuzzi was a -11. Like, he has to be better for the Blackhawks to have a chance, and he brought his A game with him last night in Dallas and scored a couple of huge goals to provide offensive support for the Blackhawks, which they obviously desperately need without their 2 center icemen. Also wanted to shout out Alex Vlasic as well. I mentioned picked up assists on both of Bertuzzi's goals last night. Also led the Blackhawks with 25 minutes and 45 seconds of time on ice. That's a season high for Alex Vlasic. I thought both offensively and defensively, Vlasic had one of his best games of the entire season, was really strong on the Blackhawks penalty kill, which, by the way, won a very interesting battle last night against the Stars. Coming into this game, Dallas had the second best power play in the NHL, while the Blackhawks had the 4th best penalty kill unit, 2 top 5 special teams groups going head-to-head with each other last night, and it was the Blackhawks penalty kill who won that battle, going 4 for 4 while shorthanded, and I thought Alex Vlasic was a huge part of that, making several great plays in the defensive zone to get some clears and allow his teammates to change and the Blackhawks to reset while they were on the penalty kill. Louis Crevier, his Twin Tower team defensive partner back there on the blue line, also made some really strong plays. But offensively and defensively, it was awesome to see what Alex Vlasic put together last night. And I feel like in general, over these last couple of weeks, he started to pick up his play after a little bit of a quiet start to the season. So really good stuff from Tyler Bertuzzi, really good stuff from Alex Vlasic. But I think the biggest game changer last night for the Blackhawks, and the player who probably impacted the final result the most, was number 40, Arvid Soderblom, who got the start in the back end, in the front end of a back-to-back for the first time this season. I mentioned on yesterday's preview episode that because the Blackhawks didn't hold a morning skate, their official starting goaltender for the contest was to be determined. I said that I expected it to be Spencer Knight. However, I did mention that just because the Hawks were 0-6 in back-to-backs coming into this game, they had started Spencer Knight in the front end in all 3 of them so far. I did wonder if head coach Jeff Blashill just kind of wanted to change things up to see if that would go any better for the team. And that's exactly what transpired. Soderblom put together his best start in over a month, picking up his first win since all the way back on November 18th. And because of his struggles recently here on the show, I've talked about, do the Blackhawks consider bringing up Laurent Brossoit and showcasing him to maybe some NHL teams against NHL competition for a little bit? Do they consider recalling Drew Commesso, who's just been waiting in the wings in Rockford for these last couple of years? Well, Soderblom, he really needed to have a bounce back type of game, and that's exactly what he put together in his first game out of the Christmas break. Ended up stopping 28 of the 31 shots that he faced, as well as 3 of the 4 Stars attempts in the shootout. Ended up recording 2.11 goals saved above expected. Also stopped 15 of 17 high danger shot attempts by the Stars in this one. And in the third period in overtime, as I mentioned a moment ago, he was really good to help the Blackhawks get to a shootout and then come away with that extra point. The third period stopped a breakaway chance from Jamie Benn with a sensational pad save. Also stopped Mikko Rantanen on a breakaway attempt as well, and Rantanen was everywhere last night. He and Wyatt Johnston both had 3 points, and then made a couple of huge right pad stops down low during the overtime period as well. I mean, Soderblom looked like a different man last night than what we've seen over the last month, and he really needed that. Really happy to see him bounce back and have one of his best starts of the season. Blackhawks would not have come away with 2 points last night if Soderblom wasn't as good as he was. Really good to see him get back on the right track. I did give Tyler Bertuzzi my number 1 star of the game just because he scored 2 goals, but you could definitely make an argument that Arvid Soderblom deserved that as well. And then, of course, I also got to talk about the rookie, Nick Lardis, coming up in the clutch to score the shootout winner for the Blackhawks last night, despite being slotted down on the 4th line with Dominic Toninato and Sam Lafferty, which the Blackhawks were without Ilya Mikheyev. So they had a spot open at right wing on their top line, and they elected to go with Landon Slaggert over Nick Lardis. And as someone who's come on this show through the opening, 37 games now of the season and really have given Jeff Blashill a lot of credit in his first year as Blackhawks head coach, some of the decisions he's made over these last couple of weeks, I do not agree with whatsoever. And this is absolutely one of them. When you have a guy who is among the leading scorers, the leading rookie scorer in the AHL, guy who just scored 71 goals in the Ontario Hockey League last year. Yes, I know those are lesser leagues, but when the Blackhawks are dying for offense, yes, they ended up scoring 3 goals last night, coming away with the win in the shootout, but still altogether, this is an offensive bunch that we know is going to have issues in getting the finished product without Bedard and without Nazar. So how the heck do you use Nick Lardis in a minimal bottom 6 fourth line role along with Dominic Toninato and Sam Lafferty when you could place him on the top line along with Tyler Bertuzzi and Jason Dickinson? It doesn't make any sense to me, but I love to see that when Lardis got his number called in overtime, he did receive one shift. I thought he had a nice sequence in the offensive zone to kind of move the puck around and create a semi-chance for one of his teammates. And then also defensively got a stick on a shot attempt from a Stars player out in the high slot, managed to deflect it up out of play. And then when Blashill throws him out onto the ice in the shootout with a chance to win the game, Lardis answers the call and puts home the shootout winner to snap the Blackhawks losing skid. You got to give these kids an opportunity, Jeff. I mean, I don't know what we're doing right now otherwise. We're playing Landon Slaggert, who, credit to him, played very well last night in his first game back from Rockford. But we all know Landon Slaggert is not a top 6 guy, A, and B, the likelihood that Slaggert is going to be a puzzle piece in this Blackhawks rebuild is a lot lower than the chances of Nicky Lardis being a top 6 crucial piece for the Blackhawks long term. So I don't really understand what's happening there whatsoever, but hopefully Lardis having a strong shift in overtime. I also thought Toninato, and Lafferty, their analytics were really solid last night. When they were on the ice together, they spent a lot of time in the offensive zone. So hopefully that, coupled with the shift in overtime, paired with the shootout winner, helps Nick Lardis get a larger role for the Blackhawks moving forward. And listen, I know he's still super early into his first NHL stint, but I don't know how Jeff Blashill can justify utilizing Lardis in that spot long term. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I've talked on the show about how maybe the way Lardis goes about his business isn't necessarily how Jeff Blashill likes players to play the game. Well, guess what? Not all players are the same out there. Some guys have different and unique skill sets, and Nick Lardis definitely has a unique skill set to have the potential to be an elite goal scorer in this league with the shot that he possesses, has some good speed, some good creativity as well. And the Blackhawks, they don't have a lot of that right now. So despite coming away with the win, despite Nick Lardis getting the shootout winner, I was left a little bit frustrated with his usage once again last night, and that's now been the case for the last 3 or 4 games, really since his NHL debut against the Detroit Red Wings, where he was on the top power play unit. He was given some more ice time at even strength. I don't know what more Nick Lardis needs to do to prove that he should be given a little bit larger of an opportunity, but hopefully how last night's game ended will help his case and allow Jeff Blashill to give him some extended time out there on the ice in the games coming up. But there are my thoughts from the Blackhawks getting a much-needed 4-3 shootout win and pleasantly surprisingly beating the Dallas Stars, the NHL's second-best team last night in their own building in the front end of the weekend back-to-back. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, for segment 2, I'll get into the latest scoop from day 2 of the 2026 World Junior Championship. But first, I got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets right as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, when a defense tightens up, or when the momentum flips right after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment so that you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, go and visit FanDuel.com today and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. As always, just a quick reminder, if you're watching on YouTube right now, hit that like button for me and make sure that you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. If you're tuning in through an audio platform and are enjoying what you're listening to, please make sure to rate and review the show. It's 100% free, both on YouTube and wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Will not cost you anything. It helps me out in a massive way in growing my platform. Segment 2 here on today's episode. Day 2 of the 2026 World Junior Championship was yesterday, and 2 of the 3 Blackhawks prospects representing their countries in the tournament were in action. Anton Frandell in Sweden had the night off. Frandell, of course, with a monstrous start in the opening game of the tournament, scoring a goal and adding an assist along with 9 shots in Sweden's 3-2 victory over Slovakia. But Blackhawks prospect AJ Spelisi in Team USA played yesterday facing off against Switzerland, while Vaclav Nestrasil, 2025 first-round selection in Czechia, played Denmark last night. Starting off with AJ Spelisi, he was actually elevated to Team USA's second-line center spot for this game after a really sharp and noticeable opening game for the Americans, where he was playing the fourth-line center spot, but his physicality, his speed, his offensive production were all on display as he finished with 2 primary assists, was throwing the body around multiple times, and I also thought had a couple of real good sequences while shorthanded, again, showing off why he's such an intriguing prospect despite not having necessarily the highest offensive ceiling. It's because he's a freak athlete, can absolutely fly around on the ice out there for a guy who's already 6'3", 205, 210 pounds. You see that raw athleticism that made him such a talented linebacker in the state of Ohio, which is known as obviously such a big football state. Spelisi sadly didn't, take advantage too much of the opportunity getting bumped up into the lineup last night on the second line, as he was held off the stat sheet after a very impactful opening game. Actually finished as a -1 in his 14 minutes and 48 seconds of ice time. But the Americans still managed to come away with a tight 2-1 win over Switzerland. Probably not the win that they were looking for, but regardless, still moved to 2-0-0 through their opening 2 games. Brody Ziemer and Will Zellers, who AJ Spelisi set up for 2 goals in their opening game, added another goal. They were responsible for both of the tallies for the United States in this one. They will have the day off here today before returning to action on Monday, December 29th. And then for Vaclav Nestrasil, baby, how can you not be excited about this kid and the incredible development that we've seen from him since being selected 25th overall by the Blackhawks back in the summer? And kind of in a similar, well, I guess I don't want to say in a similar fashion, but I just keep going back to Nestrasil. When the Blackhawks selected him, I thought he was going to be a little bit of a project in a similar sense to Mason West. Like, it's someone who has a super high ceiling. There's a lot of runway there, but he's still a little bit raw and has to go and put some things together over the next couple of years to become a legitimate pro level prospect. Well, Nestrasil has quickly already looked like a very promising pro prospect in just a couple of months' time, as he's been one of the best freshmen in all of college hockey this year with UMass, and it has snowballed that momentum over into a fantastic start to the World Junior Championship. A 2-point performance in the opening game for Czechia, and then another 2 points last night in a dominant 7-2 win over Denmark. And in that opening game, we saw Nestrasil make an excellent no-look pass to set up one of his teammates, while we saw him pull off a marvelous no-look shot on the power play last night for his first goal of the tournament. Nestrasil is pretty nasty out there, man, with his puck skills for a guy who's 6'5". One of the assists that he picked up, before he made that no-look pass, I thought he made a really nice read in transition to poke the puck up and then position himself back into a dangerous area to get a 2-on-1 with his teammate. Really good play recognition overall. Like, for a guy who I thought was a raw prospect just a couple of months ago, he is really flourishing and sure looks like he has the size and skill combo to be a very talented power forward for the Blackhawks at the next level. It's been an awesome start to the World Junior Championship for Vaclav Nestrasil. Adds another 2 points last night in Czechia's win over Denmark. Big bounce back for them to get their first win of the tournament after falling 7-5 in a hard-fought contest against Canada in their opener, which Nestrasil, he had some interesting comments after the game saying, Canada, with kind of the way that they celebrated and Porter Martone's antics, He said, if that's how Canada celebrates after beating Czechia in a preliminary round, that must mean Czechia is making some moves with their national hockey. So very happy with what Vaclav Nestrasil has done so far to kick off the tournament. He and Czechia will also have the day off here today, just like AJ Spelisi and the Americans will after playing twice in the opening 2 days. Frandell and Sweden, as I mentioned, had yesterday off. They will be back in action here today, 1 p.m. Central Time, just about an hour now after the time of this recording, as the Swedes will be taking on Team Germany. Real quick, do want to mention as well, Team Canada had another near scare. Well, last year it was a real scare. This time it was a near scare against Latvia in their second game as they beat Latvia 2-1 in overtime. Shout out to Latvia for finding a way to make these games competitive the last 2 years against Team Canada. Obviously stunned them in a shootout last year. They scored a goal late in regulation to tie it up 1-1 and force overtime. And I know there were lots of Canadian fans thinking, oh boy, here we go again. But fortunately for them, Michael Hage comes up clutch with the overtime winner to lift Canada to a 2-1 victory and avoid a disaster for a second consecutive year against Latvia. Canada also moves to 2-0-0, but certainly wasn't the final outcome that they were looking for when you would imagine they had a chance to go and pounce on Latvia and maybe have a chip on their shoulder after being stunned by them last year. Well, Latvia found a way to make it close once again. Canada does move to 2-0, but maybe not as dominant of a start as we were expecting from them. We'll see if that's going to have any long-term implications for their chances of winning the gold medal, and I believe they rightfully deserve to be the favorites with their roster. All right, there are the latest updates from the opening 2 days of the World Junior Championship. Excited to see what Anton Frandell in Sweden have in store for all of us here today. Coming up in just a moment, before I close out today's show, still got to quickly preview tonight's matchup, the back end of the weekend back-to-back against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Segment 3, the Blackhawks are back in action here today for the back end of a weekend back-to-back out of the Christmas break as they will take on the Pittsburgh Penguins at the United Center for the first of 2 meetings here this season. Game is scheduled for 6 p.m. Central Time at the UC. Definitely sucks that, we get robbed of a Connor Bedard versus Sidney Crosby matchup. Obviously, Crosby was Bedard's childhood idol growing up, and this was the matchup that Bedard had when he made his NHL debut a couple of years ago. So unfortunate that I'm always excited. I've actually never seen Sidney Crosby in person, so I'm very excited to get to the UC tonight, but stinks we're not going to see Connor Bedard going up against him here this evening. But tonight is a battle between two teams who have really fallen off a cliff in December. The Blackhawks, even with the win last night against the Stars, are still 3-8-1 in 11 games so far this month. The Penguins, they're 3-5-4 in 12 games in December and have lost 9 of their last 10 contests. To be fair, they have lost 4 of those in overtime. So 5 of their last 10 games, they've picked up a point. But it's still been a stretch that's kind of deflated all the early momentum that they had here this season and has dropped them to the 3rd worst team in the Eastern Conference, as the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets are the only squads lower than them in the standings. The Blackhawks, with a win last night, vault out of last place in the entire league and are now second to last in the Western Conference, with the dumpster fire Vancouver Canucks being the only team behind them. And it's also a matchup between two teams who are dealing with some injuries right now. The Blackhawks undoubtedly have it worse, though, than the Pens, as they're down Bedard, they're down Nazar. I'm guessing Ilya Mikheyev probably isn't going to play again here tonight. The Hawks don't have a morning skate once again since they traveled from Dallas to Chicago late last night. So no official confirmation on the lineup, but I'm guessing Mikheyev is still going to be away from the team. And honestly, just considering the developments with Nick Foligno, and I know the call-up of Landon Slager was probably more so because Ilya Mikheyev wasn't able to play yesterday, but I still feel like I'm hopeful that Nick Foligno will be able to play for the first time since November 15th, but I still feel like it probably isn't going to be happening here tonight. But we'll have to wait and see up until pregame warmups, For the Penguins side of things, the biggest injury that they're dealing with right now is Evgeny Malkin, their second-line center, who got off to a really excellent start to the season, has been a little quieter, was a little quieter in the last couple of weeks prior to his injury, which kind of came out of nowhere. It was initially a maintenance day for Malkin, then he was ruled day-to-day, then he was ruled out for a longer period of time. Not expected to suit up in the Penguins' first game out of the Christmas break, by the way. They did not play last night as the NHL returned from the holidays. So not expecting Evgeny Malkin to play here tonight. Philip Hollander is also out for the Penguins due to a blood clot, which is a very unfortunate situation. Wishing all the best for him. Blake Lizotte is also injured right now. Blackhawks legend Caleb Jones, who's kind of been utilized as their seventh defenseman, also isn't expected to play in his return back to the UC. So the Blackhawks have it worse, but two teams who are definitely a little bit banged up right now. But what I will say is I do think this is a really good opportunity for the Blackhawks. Well, it's hard to expect them to get the same offensive production that they got last night against Dallas. I do think this is a really good opportunity for them to make it 2 wins in a row and really change the tides of the back-to-back so far this season and go and pick up 2 consecutive wins after going 0-6 in their first 3 sets of back-to-backs this year. Not only are the Penguins losers in 9 of their last 10 games, not only are they dealing with some injuries right now, but historically over the last 10 to 15 years, I know that really doesn't weigh a ton into what's going to happen tonight, but for whatever reason, the Blackhawks have just had the Pittsburgh Penguins number. They're 14-4-1 in their last 19 games overall against the Penguins and 9-2 in their last 11 games at the United Center. So they've been really good ever since Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who, as I mentioned, isn't going to play here this evening, have taken over for Pittsburgh. Hawks are still going to have their hands full tonight going up against Crosby, who's been phenomenal per usual. He's the leading goal scorer and point getter for the team. But if history is on their side, Blackhawks have a good chance to make it 2 wins in a row here and close out 2025 on a much better note than the month opened up with. As far as the Blackhawks lineup, I'm guessing Vlasic is going to keep it the same as it was last night coming off of a victory, meaning Tyler Bertuzzi, Jason Dickinson, and Landon Slaggert as the top line. Would love to see Landon Slaggert come out and play with the same fire that he did last night in Dallas. He's a guy who has to win over this coaching staff and front office to prove that he deserves an opportunity to be a future bottom sixer for the Blackhawks in their rebuild. Hasn't really made the most of that opportunity so far in his NHL career and definitely the season. Last night, even though he did actually pick up his first assist of the season, I thought it was his best game of the year. Go and play with that same energy on the top line tonight, Landon Slaggert. Then that leaves Teuvo Teravainen, Ryan Donato, and Andre Burakovsky as the second line. Truthfully, I think this is the Blackhawks' best offensive line right now and had a pretty good game at even strength last night in Dallas. Oliver Moore and Ryan Green sticked with one another on the third line, while Colton Dach was elevated from the fourth line to join those two. So, a continuous all-rookie line, even though Nick Lardis has been moved down to the fourth line with Dominic Toninato and Sam Lafferty. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, even if Slaggert was on his A game last night, Lardis should be on that top line, and it should be Slaggert, Toninato, and Lafferty. I don't know what Jeff Blashill is doing there, but considering the Blackhawks won last night, I'm guessing Nick Lardis is going to be on the fourth line once again. Hopefully that changes, though. And then defensively, I think it's going to be Vlasic and Crevier, who were awesome as the top pairing last night, and I think have kind of found their stride once again as a top pairing after being separated there for a little bit. Matt Grzelcyk and Artem Levshunov as a second pairing. Artie picked up an assist on Jason Dickinson's goal, his 4th of the season, second in the last 5 games, the former star. Levshunov with 16 assists is now solo 3rd among all rookies and helpers this season. And then Wyatt Kaiser and Connor Murphy rounding things out at the third pairing, leaving Ethan Del Mastro as a healthy scratch. Would like to see EDM get into the lineup here sometime soon if the Blackhawks are going to have him up on the NHL roster, but coming off of a win, I'm just hard-pressed to see that happening here tonight. And then in goal with Arvid Soderblom, starting the front end of a back-to-back for the first time this season. That leaves Spencer Knight getting the start here at home in the back end against the Pens. His first start in a back end of a back-to-back so far this year. And Knight is 10-10-5 now on the season, but still has a 2.55 goals against and 914 save percentage, which I think is really impressive considering the Hawks have now been without Bedard for over 2 weeks. Obviously, the Blackhawks offense isn't the same without him. Defensively, they've struggled. They've had games where they've struggled. It hasn't been horrible defensive performances, but still, Spencer Knight has managed to keep his goals against and save percentage relatively the same since the Blackhawks slide following Thanksgiving. And I think that's really impressive that he's remained playing at that same high caliber level despite the team in front of him not doing the same. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. That way you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes as soon as they become available. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can follow me on X at Jack Bushman 2. My Strictly Blackhawks account, though, is at Talkin' Hockey. Make sure to give that one a follow so you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.